Hey fellow YouTubers, welcome back to the land of the wombats. Hope you're all well. It's your bad old Uncle Chris here to tell you a story. We're sitting under the pear trees today. It's a really lovely day. But I thought I'd tell you a story about solar power failure. So without further ado, let's get into it. A bit over a week ago, there was a public holiday for the day prior to the football finals. It's the AFL finals, the Australian Football League. The fans must need some time to get properly prepared, whatever that involves. Anyway, the day was as lovely as a spring day could be. Cool air, blue sunny skies, absolutely no wind to speak of. It was a most excellent day to continue demolishing the old steel shed. But unbeknownst to the footy fans, the people enjoying a public holiday, or yours truly demolishing the steel shed, the electricity grid in the state was having something of a major and previously unknown drama. Now the Australian Energy Market Operator, those are the dudes that actually work out how the grid works, and they are responsible for the entire east coast of the continent. They were having something of a meltdown because 1 in 3 houses on that coast has rooftop solar power panels. That's 1 in 3. And all those power systems connect their output into the mains grid. Now what happened that day was that during the middle of the day, there was lots and lots of solar power being produced and fed back into the grid. That was supplying the houses that had the panels connected to them, but it was also supplying their neighbours, their neighbours' neighbours, and their neighbours' neighbours' neighbours, etc. Look, it's all very well and good, except that day, what with the massive solar house party going on, house party, yo, nobody seemed to want enough of the stuff to produce by the huge fossil fuel powered generators, and they weren't able to switch it off quickly. We run coal-fired power stations in this state, as well as gas. Look, it was a new and almost unheard of situation. So much solar power, derived electricity, was being produced and exported from house to house that demand for energy from the coal and gas plants in the state was forecast to fall below 1800 megawatts. And that's below the minimum output threshold of all those big machines, which is 1865 megawatts. Oops, not good. It's a very rare occurrence. Usual average demand in this state is about 5,000 megawatts. And also in the state, which is the state of Victoria, the peak demand's about 10,000 megawatts. So that's 10 million watts from households need. So too much electricity from the really big coal and gas generators, with nowhere to go, may possibly produce the magic blue smoke and flames somewhere or other in the grid. Nobody who works on the grid ever wants to experience a day of interesting pyrotechnics. No one wants to go to work and see that. Fortunately that day, the excess could be sent interstate, where they weren't on public holidays, and although that was a very close thing as well, because as happens, that day, those interconnector lines between one state and the next, they were undergoing service and maintenance, so they had to be connected in a real hurry. Look, big deal you may say, nothing much happened, although, it was yet another close call for the grid. And fair enough too, if you say that. Some folks have recently been clapping their hands in glee at the thought of the end of using coal to generate electricity. And they point to the UK experience. Hey, didn't the United Kingdom recently phase out all coal-fired power stations? Well, yeah, duh, but I'm pretty sure they have 9 operating nuclear power plants. How's that any different? And they're also connected to the European grid as a backup. Now, folks, let's not even talk blithely about ignoring the dangers of radioactive waste. I'd say any waste that hangs around for 250,000 years, it's probably a bit of a problem. And the way they store it's just a drama. Years ago, when I began writing about these sorts of issues, and I've been writing I've done my own blog for over 11 years, and wrote for the hippy press for about 10 years before that. I really thought getting the ideas out there would make a difference, you know, somewhere, anywhere. What you end up finding, though, is that with these sorts of discussions, is that you have lots of pointless arguments with armchair theorists. Don't believe me? Well, try going to a party with a whole bunch of environmental activists and just mention that the grid, you know, it really does require massive generators with large physically spinning components so as to ensure the frequency in the grid remains stable. And they'll look at you and go, what did you just say? And as a side note, the grid-tied solar power systems which get installed in houses, they just can't do that trick because they're too cheap. We did the system on the cheap, as we always do. Now what's interesting about the household here is that the inverter I had to install is not cheap and it does that trick. What a surprise. Anyway, the reaction from all those environmental activists would be immediate. They would just dive on you. And just prior to being stomped to death, you'd hear, "Solar, solar, death to the unbeliever." And so it would go. Then you find the words would be cancelled and deleted, as they do. Cancel culture sucks. For 14 years, we've lived in a house with an off-grid solar power system. We're on to the second set of house batteries, and those things are expensive. Every year, there's always something which needs doing, or even worse, goes wrong. The system and technology is good, but you know, it's not good enough to run an industrial civilization. And I can't even claim that we generate 100% of the electricity we use in the household from the sun annually, because, you know, for 5% of the year, the electricity has to come from a little fossil fuel powered generator hooked up to a battery charger. The past year we used 80 litres, or 21 gallons of petrol, which is gas in US parlance, to run that generator. You know, it's actually a pretty good outcome. And the past 12 months we've used about 2.785 megawatt hours in total, or about 7 kilowatt hours a day. And it should be reminded that we also use electricity for cooking purposes. Now, an electric oven or an induction cooker, those are amazing technology. The cost of the system, though, is completely bonkers. All the solar power system here probably cost around 100,000 Australian dollars, which is about 70,000 US dollars. What can I say? It's a financially ruinous hobby. But in practical terms, what that means is, for the electricity we do use, it costs about 10 times what most people attached to the grid paid. Complaining about 30 cents a kilowatt hour, try paying $3 a kilowatt hour. Now you may laugh uncomfortably, or happily tell me I'm wrong, but you know, to me, it appears that most of the solar equipment getting attached to the grid is just too cheap and too dumb. You know, you really need the large generators to dictate the terms of the arrangement. Look, no doubts I'm going to get some hate mail for this one, and I'll probably get stomped to death by the next environmental activists I come across. But you know, what they need to hear is, you need to either pay more or use less electricity. You know, stomp, stomp, stomp. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Well done, them. You know, however, it's an interesting hobby. And occasionally an article appears in the newspapers on the subject, and, you know, the sensitive bloke spends a bit of time thinking about the implications of those articles. You know, even being off-grid, the mains grid goes down. You know, it's still a problem for us. It's almost impossible to be able to earn an income if the mains grid becomes unstable. You know, we often, Sandra and I often joke about the zombie apocalypse. Oh, the zombies are coming, the zombies are coming. But I said to Sandra the other day, listen, Sandra, I like you, but your brains will so be zombie food if the zombies come for us. You know, earlier today, I read a really, really fun quote from a Jack Vance book. He's an American author who's died about 10, 15 years ago. Great author. You should read him. in the story, two old friends had met up after surviving some challenging situations, which is a typical Jack Vance story. And they said, you know what? While we're alive, we should sit amongst the coloured lights and taste good wines and discuss our adventures in far places. For when we are dead, the opportunity is past. True words. So folks, thanks very much for listening and watching, and I'll see you next week. But just before you go, hang in there and we'll have a quick slideshow so you can see what all this used to look like. Catch you then.